If the hospital hadn't screwed up the surgery schedule, I wouldn't be telling this story. I was supposed to be knocked out under general anesthesia while a guy in scrubs fixed my hernia, not walking into my own house at 2 in the afternoon, holding a prescription bag, and smelling the unmistakable scent of expensive cologne that didn't belong to me. The smell hit me the second I stepped through the door, sharp, clean, way too fancy for anything I ever wore. Claire hated strong scents, said they gave her headaches. But suddenly, the entire living room smelled like a cologne ad. I stood there, holding a bottle of painkillers I wasn't going to need anymore, wondering why our front door was unlocked in the middle of a workday, why Claire's car was parked 2 blocks away, and why I had this growing pressure in my gut that had nothing to do with the surgery that got canceled. The house was too quiet. The TV wasn't on. No music, no kitchen fan, just the low hum of the fridge and that cologne. I moved slowly, not because of pain, but because every step made it harder to breathe. The hallway light was off, but there were faint sounds coming from the guest room, the one we hadn't used since Claire's sister stayed over 6 months ago. The door was slightly open, and I swear I heard a giggle. A grown man giggle, followed by Claire's voice, muffled but familiar in that soft, fake way she used when she wanted something. I didn't kick the door open. I didn't yell. I didn't even say her name. I just stood there and listened. "You like this tie?" He never wears it, but I always thought it looked good. My tie. The blue one. She gave me that thing for our 5th anniversary and bitched every time I didn't wear it. Then came the sound of a zipper and more giggling, followed by the unmistakable rhythm of a bed frame tapping against the wall. I walked away. I didn't even look. I backed out of the hallway and sat down in the dining room, right where I could see the front door. My heart was pounding, not from betrayal, but from the calm that settled in right after the shock. I had always imagined that if I caught Claire cheating, I'd go ballistic, punch someone, scream, flip a table. But I didn't feel any of that. Just numb, cold, calculated, distant, like someone had unplugged the emotions and left me operating on autopilot. They didn't hear me leave. I walked out just as quietly as I came in, got in my car, and parked around the block. I waited. About 40 minutes later, the front door opened. A man walked out, tall, well-built, probably early 30s, wearing a suit jacket that looked custom-tailored and the smug look of someone who thought he just had a good time. He didn't notice me sitting there with my engine off and my windows cracked. I watched him walk to his silver Audi, unlock it with a beep, and drive off without a care in the world. Claire came out 2 minutes later, in her bathrobe, carrying a trash bag. I watched her toss the evidence of her betrayal into the garbage bin like it was just another Wednesday. Then she stood there for a second, took a deep breath, and smiled. That was the worst part. The smile. Like she had just finished a workout or closed a great deal at work. Like nothing was wrong. That night, I said nothing. I didn't even bring up the surgery. I told her they rescheduled it, that I'd be going back next week. She nodded, distracted, scrolling through her phone. When I leaned in to kiss her forehead like I usually did before bed, she flinched slightly, then caught herself and smiled like everything was normal. I went to the guest room and lay there in the same sheets they had defiled, smelling that cologne she claimed gave her headaches. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and started planning. Not a confrontation. Not yet. I wanted to know more. Who was he? How long had it been going on? Was this a one-time thing or part of something bigger? I needed a way to track her without using her phone. Something she wouldn't suspect. And then it hit me, the keycard. Claire's job at the hotel gave her access to an employee keycard that tracked entries and exits at every floor, every door, every shift. I used to laugh when she talked about how strict the security was, how she had to swipe in and out of even the supply closet. It was all digital, all logged. She'd once told me about a coworker who got fired for sneaking off to nap in a guest room, caught because of his card history. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I slipped her card out of her purse. I took a photo of the barcode on the back, just enough to clone it using a cheap RFID duplicator I bought that same day on my lunch break. Claire never noticed. I returned the card before she even finished drying her hair. Over the next 2 weeks, I went to that hotel 3 times. Posing as a vendor, I bribed a janitor with $50 and a 6-pack to let me into the back office when no one was around. It took me 5 minutes to plug my laptop into their reader system and pull her logs using the clone. What I found made my stomach turn. She wasn't just meeting him at our house. She had been taking him to the hotel, booking empty suites under dummy guest names, checking in during hours she claimed to be at client meetings, and sometimes even staying past her scheduled shifts. She was smart, covered her tracks, but she wasn't careful enough. The man's name was Shane Mercer, director of sales, divorced, no kids, used to work for a resort in Miami. He was in the hotel's internal directory, which I accessed using Claire's login info, thanks to a sticky note in her desk drawer labeled HR Pass. Real subtle, I started connecting dots. Claire's sudden interest in spin class, the cologne she once accidentally spilled on her blouse, her new diet, the expensive lingerie that showed up in our laundry basket despite. Shane was in the background of a photo she had shown me weeks ago from a team-building retreat. Standing a little too close, looking a little too familiar. I printed everything. Logs, photos, even copied the hotel room security footage from the dates she checked in with him. I bought an external hard drive and saved everything on it, labeled Tax Files 2023. She wouldn't look twice. The final straw came the night she came home wearing that same blue tie again, not on me, but draped around her neck like some kind of souvenir. She laughed when I asked about it, said it was just something she found in the closet while looking for winter scarves. She wore it while making dinner. I didn't eat. I wasn't sick, just disgusted. At her, at myself, at the whole lie we called a marriage. And that's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to confront her. I was going to destroy her. It was exactly 1 week after I cloned her keycard when I decided to make my move. Not with a confrontation, but with a little trick that would give me what I needed. Claire had mentioned a hotel staff mixer was happening that Friday night. It wasn't mandatory, but she was going anyway. Said it was at one of the rooftop bars they had rented out just for employees. I told her I was going to meet an old co-worker for drinks after work, someone I hadn't seen in years. She barely reacted, just nodded and said to have fun. I doubt she even heard me. She left the house around 5:30 p.m., dressed like she was about to go on a date, not a company function. Her makeup was heavier than usual, lipstick darker, the kind she only wore when she knew someone would be looking at her closely. She sprayed herself with that same vanilla-scented perfume she used to wear for me back when we actually liked each other. I watched her walk out the door without saying anything, just nodded and gave a little smile like I was none the wiser. Then I waited exactly 20 minutes before I followed her. I parked my car 4 blocks away from the hotel. I'd memorized the entrances and exits from the building map I'd downloaded. I wore a dark hoodie and a cap low over my eyes and walked in through the rear service door that employees used. I still had the janitor's spare card and used it to get through security. The employee lounge had access to the main hallway where all the meeting rooms and lounges were. The mixer was happening on the rooftop, but I had no interest in that. I knew Claire wouldn't be spending much time up there. Instead, I waited near the security office on the 3rd floor. It was a small room used mostly to monitor live footage and radio dispatch to security guards. I timed it perfectly. Shift change was at 6:45 p.m., and during that gap, I slipped into the unlocked back hallway and walked straight into the archive room, where they kept the stored footage. I didn't need much. I already knew what date and time to look for. All I had to do was copy the files. I plugged in my hard drive, accessed the server using the login from Claire's sticky note, and within minutes, I had downloaded 3 separate files. Each one was labeled with the date she booked the dummy suite. The angles weren't great, but they were enough. In one, she's clearly entering the suite with Shane. In another, they exit the elevator holding hands, him adjusting his belt. In the third, she kisses him in the hallway before turning the corner. Nothing subtle about it. No chance of misinterpretation. She was cheating, and it wasn't just physical. There was intimacy in the way they moved around each other. Comfort. Habit. I left the hotel the same way I came in and went home. Claire wasn't back until almost midnight. She came in smelling like champagne and laughed when I asked how the party went. She didn't notice the USB sitting in my pocket. I watched her eat a granola bar while scrolling through her phone like she hadn't just spent the night grinding against her coworker in a hotel room paid for by the same company she now represented in HR meetings about loyalty and professionalism. The hypocrisy made my skin crawl. The next morning, I told her I needed to borrow her laptop to check a PDF from a loan application. She handed it over without a thought. I installed a keylogger in under 30 seconds. Every password, every email, every private message, it was all mine now. I copied everything to a cloud folder she didn't know existed, one she would never find. And then I waited again. Not for proof. I had more than enough. But for the right moment. I wasn't just going to confront her in the kitchen like some soap opera idiot. I wanted her to feel it. I wanted to hit her with it when she felt safest. The moment finally came on a random Tuesday evening. We were eating takeout on the couch, and she was talking about some girl at work who wore too much makeup. I nodded along while watching her reach for the remote, pretending everything was normal. Then I asked, calm as ever, "Hey, Claire, how's Shane?" She froze. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. She blinked at me like I'd just asked her if she believed in aliens. What? I asked how Shane's doing. You know, the sales director who's been asleep with my wife for the past 3 months in hotel rooms you booked using fake names. That's Shane. She didn't say anything. She dropped the fork, and it clattered on the takeout container. Her eyes darted toward the door like she was thinking about running. I kept talking. I've got the security footage, the swipe logs, and every message you sent him from your hotel email, which, by the way, you never logged out of on your personal laptop. Rookie move. Wait, what are you talking about? Don't insult me, Claire. Don't lie. I've seen it all. The tie. The guest suite bookings. The nights you came home late with hair and cheap excuses. You couldn't even be creative about it. You used our anniversary gift as part of your cheating outfit. How poetic. I didn't think you. You didn't think I'd find out. You thought I was too boring, too predictable, too focused on my spreadsheets to notice that my wife stopped loving me and started sleep with her coworker. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke again. I didn't mean for it to happen. No one ever does. But it did. And now I know. And now you don't get to control the story anymore. She stood up, tried to say something, but I cut her off. I'm not done. Sit down. She sat. I reached into the side table and pulled out the hard drive. I dropped it on the table between us. Everything is on here. Every dirty little detail. I'm not going to post it. I'm not going to send it to your boss. But I want you to know that I could. And that I still might, depending on what you do next. She didn't cry. Not yet. She just sat there, staring at the little black box like it was a bomb waiting to go off. I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. Claire didn't speak for a full minute. She sat stiff, her back pressed against the couch like I might throw the hard drive at her, but I wasn't angry in the way she expected. I wasn't shouting or pacing or doing anything theatrical. I was calm, and I think that's what scared her most. She'd seen me upset before, sure, over small things, bad customer service, missing packages, late bills, but never like this, never completely controlled. She finally reached forward and pushed the container of food aside with her knuckles, still not touching the hard drive, her fingers shaking just slightly. I watched her movements carefully. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then finally asked, "What do you want me to say?" I leaned back, resting one arm on the couch, not looking at her face. I stared at the TV screen, which had gone black and was now showing our reflections faintly in the glass. "I don't want anything from you," I said. Not an apology, not an explanation, not a justification. I already know everything. You just need to say it out loud so you can hear how disgusting it actually sounds. Her voice was almost a whisper. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. I looked at her then, directly in the eyes. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but you booked rooms with him under fake names. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but you wore the perfume I bought you and lied to my face every time you said you were working late. So explain that part to me. She looked away, her eyes locked on the hardwood floor as if it would open up and swallow her. I didn't think you noticed. I didn't think you'd care. You didn't think I'd care? You think I'm that disconnected from this marriage that I wouldn't care if my wife slept with someone else right under my nose? Do you know how sick that sounds? Her voice rose just a bit, defensive, like she finally realized she couldn't play the victim. We haven't been close for a long time. You stopped asking how I was doing. You barely touch me anymore. You just buried yourself in work and stayed in your little routines. I laughed, not because anything was funny, but because of how predictable that answer was. You're right. I did bury myself in work. Do you want to know why? Because every time I tried to have a real conversation with you, you shut me down. You changed the subject or gave one-word answers or acted like I was being dramatic. So yeah, I stopped trying. And maybe that makes me a bad husband, but it doesn't make you a good person for cheating. Her mouth tightened into a thin line, and she started twisting the ring on her finger. It just happened, okay? He was there, he understood me, and one thing led to another. I didn't plan it. I didn't go looking for it. You didn't have to go looking for it because you let it happen. That's the difference. You gave yourself permission. You let it grow. You fed it, watered it, kept it alive while I sat here wondering why the woman I married turned into someone I didn't recognize. And you know what? I could have lived with the distance. I could have lived with the silence. But this is something else. Claire stood up then, like she couldn't take being in the same room anymore, and walked over to the window. She crossed her arms and stared out, not saying anything. I watched her carefully, wondering what was going through her head. Was she sorry? Or just sorry she got caught? She didn't cry, didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't even try to touch me. I think deep down she knew there was no way back from this, not because of the act itself, but because of what it said about her character. That she had the time, the energy, and the strategy to pull it off for months. Finally, she turned around and asked, "So what now?" I stood up slowly, not to intimidate her, but to match her posture, to make it clear I wasn't shrinking or backing down. "Now you pack a bag and stay somewhere else for a while. I need space. I need to figure out what I want from this mess, and I can't do that while pretending we're okay under the same roof." She opened her mouth like she was going to argue, then nodded. "Okay. Don't take anything that belongs to both of us. Just the basics. Your clothes, your laptop, whatever. I'm not going to toss your stuff on the lawn, but don't test me either." She walked past me toward the stairs. I didn't watch her go. I just stood there, staring at the blank screen in front of me, my reflection looking like someone I didn't know anymore. When I heard the soft thud of the bedroom door closing, I sat back down and finally let myself breathe. I thought that would be the worst of it, but I was wrong. Later that night, after she had left with a suitcase and her work bag, I opened the hard drive again, not because I needed more proof, but because I wanted to see the exact moment she stopped being my wife. And I found it. A short clip from the hallway cam, dated 5 weeks ago, showing her waiting for Shane outside the elevator. She wasn't nervous, wasn't sneaking around. She was smiling, checking her reflection in her phone screen, fixing her hair. She looked happy. She looked like she belonged to someone else. And I realized, maybe she had for a long time. I just didn't want to see it. The next morning, the house felt different. Not quieter, just different. I didn't expect peace or relief after what had happened, but I thought maybe I'd feel a little more in control. That didn't happen. Instead, I stared at the same coffee mug I'd been using for 6 years and thought about how she used to make me coffee every Monday morning like it was some tradition we built together. Now I couldn't drink it without thinking about her laughing in hotel hallways with someone else. That's when I stopped sitting in my thoughts and started making a list. Not a list of things to throw away or divide in a settlement, but a list of people. Friends, coworkers, clients, people she cared about keeping impressed. I wasn't going to tell everyone about what she did. I was just going to let her live with the truth in the wrong places. I didn't want to go online or send some emotional post into the world hoping for validation. I didn't want attention or pity. What I wanted was discomfort, that kind of slow pressure you feel when someone's looking at you differently and you can't quite figure out why. That's what I was after. I still had her laptop. She left it on the desk in her rush to get out. She probably didn't think I'd go through it again, not after what I already found. But she was wrong. What I needed wasn't in her inbox this time, it was in her calendar. Claire kept detailed meeting notes and reminders. Most of them were boring, basic HR stuff, but on Thursdays, there was a repeating block that just said, "Offsite lunch, personal." It didn't have an address or contact link to it, but when I checked her browser history, she had pulled directions to a specific Italian restaurant across town more than once. When I checked my own records, I noticed a pattern. Every Thursday, I had standing Zoom meetings from noon to 2. I always stayed in the home office with the door shut. She knew that. She planned around it. I waited for Thursday. I didn't park near the restaurant. I parked 2 blocks away and walked. It was a family-owned place with outdoor seating and a fake rustic design they thought made the place feel fancy. I took a seat across the street at a cafe and watched through the glass. At 12:17, Shane showed up, wearing sunglasses and a blue button-up shirt. At 12:24, Claire arrived. She looked like she hadn't slept much, but her hair was done and she wore the same beige coat she always used when she wanted to look professional but still attractive. They didn't sit right away. They hugged first, not the friendly kind, not the kind you give to a coworker. Then they sat, ordered, and talked. I didn't walk over. I didn't interrupt. I just pulled out my phone and recorded. I didn't need audio. The body language said enough. The way they leaned in, the way he touched her wrist, the way she smiled back. It was like watching people rehearse a relationship, one they couldn't have in public, but still tried to live out in the little corners of the world they thought were private. I let the recording run for 15 minutes, then stopped it, deleted the backup, and sent the video to 2 people, Shane's manager and the hotel's regional director. No text, no context. Just the clip. By Friday morning, both Claire and Shane had been placed on leave while the hotel did an internal ethics review. I found out through a mutual friend who worked in the finance department. Apparently, someone had forwarded the video to the HR department anonymously. I didn't send it to anyone else. I didn't have to. Once it reached the right hands, it did the job. That was enough for me. Claire called me that night, probably thinking I'd deny any involvement. She didn't ask right away. She started with, "They're calling it misconduct. I could lose my job over this." I didn't react. "You mean the same job you used to plan hotel stays with a guy you weren't supposed to be seeing?" She paused. "Do you think I deserve this?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." She tried again. "We weren't doing anything at work. Claire, you used the hotel email. You booked rooms during your shifts. You met him during work hours. You think that's going to matter to anyone once the footage gets circulated in the internal channels?" She lowered her voice. "You sent that video. I didn't send it to the world. Just to the two people who would care the most. You still have your apartment. Use the time to think about what matters." She went quiet again. I didn't think it would go this far. It always goes this far when someone gets careless. After that call, I didn't hear from her for 3 days. I didn't call her, didn't check her socials, didn't ask around. I just went back to living, one day at a time. The house felt clearer now. Not cleaner, just lighter. I didn't go on some rampage or light her stuff on fire or throw tantrums. I just responded. I made sure her private shame got the audience it deserved, not the internet, not some blog, just the exact people who believe she was someone she clearly wasn't anymore. Claire finally showed up at the house on a Tuesday evening without calling or texting first. I was in the garage, sorting through old boxes, trying to decide what needed to be thrown out. I heard the front door open and close, her footsteps slow but deliberate. I didn't rush to greet her. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked into the kitchen, where she was standing near the counter, looking around like she barely recognized the place. She wasn't carrying anything. No papers, no bag. Just herself, in the same gray hoodie she used to wear when she worked from home. She didn't sit down, and neither did I. We stood facing each other, like we were in a room that didn't know who belonged in it anymore. "I figured it was time to talk," she said quietly, her voice rough like she hadn't slept much again. "I figured you'd show up eventually," I replied. "I've been thinking about everything," she started, then hesitated, like she was editing her words as she spoke. "About what I did, what it means, and what I want from all of this." I didn't nod. I didn't give her any expression to work with. I just waited. "I know you're angry," she continued. "You have every right to be. And I'm not expecting forgiveness. I just want to talk like adults. Not with accusations or yelling. Just real talk." "All right," I said. "Start talking." She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "I ruined everything. I didn't think I was, but I did. I thought I could handle it. That it would be this small part of my life that didn't interfere with the rest of it. But I lost control. And it wasn't worth it." "You lost control the second you let someone else into our life," I said, my tone even. "You lost control when you started lying every day. You don't get points for realizing it too late." "I know," she said. "That's not what I'm asking for. I'm not trying to save my reputation or get my job back. I'm trying to figure out what you want to do. If we can come out of this somehow without completely destroying each other." "I don't care about destroying you," I said. "I care about understanding why I spent years building something with someone who had no intention of protecting it." She looked down for a moment, then back at me. "I did want to protect it. I just got selfish. I got caught up in feeling noticed again, feeling important." "You weren't invisible, Claire," I said. "You were bored. That's what this was. You thought you could have a little excitement on the side and come home to a stable life like nothing happened. That's not how marriage works." "I'm not asking to undo what happened," she said. "I'm asking if there's a path forward, even if it's not back to what we had. Just something that doesn't end with us hating each other." I looked at her carefully. She didn't look like the woman who used to plan weekend trips or laugh at bad movies on the couch. She looked like someone exhausted by their own choices, someone who finally realized that there were consequences beyond the initial thrill. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I don't trust you. And I'm not going to live in a house with someone I can't trust. That's not a life. That's a trap." "So what are you saying?" she asked. "That it's over?" "I'm saying that I'm not your backup plan," I said. "I'm not the guy you come back to when your side life collapses. I was your husband, and you made choices that turned me into a stranger." She looked at me for a long time, then finally sat down at the table. Do you want a divorce? I sat across from her. Eventually, yes. But not like this. Not until I figured out what I need to walk away with. I'm not going to rush into anything just to be done with you. She nodded slowly. Okay. I'll give you space. Whatever you need. I'm not asking for space, I said. I'm asking for honesty. If you've got more to say, say it now. Don't leave anything else hanging in the air. She looked down again, took another breath. There's nothing else. Shane and I weren't in love. It was just a distraction. It ended when everything came out. He's gone. His position's under review too. I haven't seen him since that day. Not sure that makes it better, I said. But at least it makes it simpler. She nodded again. I'm sorry. I know, I said. But sorry isn't enough. She stood up again, slowly, like she wasn't sure what to do next. So I'll go. I'll check in later if that's okay. Just to see where things stand. I didn't respond right away. Then I said, that's fine. But don't expect anything. I need time, and you don't control how much. She walked toward the door, stopped before opening it. I really did love you. I believe you did, I said. But not enough. She left quietly. No slammed doors. No dramatic exit. Just a slow walk to a car that used to be ours but now felt like hers alone. I stood there for a while, staring at the empty space she'd just walked through, thinking about how many things I didn't say, not because I was holding back, but because some things didn't need to be said. They were already done. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. It wasn't that she had taken something with her, it was that too much of her still lingered in the smallest parts of the place. The blanket she used when we watched shows on the couch, the half-used shampoo in the shower, the jacket still hanging in the closet by the front door. Things that shouldn't have meant anything suddenly made it impossible to walk through the place without being reminded of how fake it had all become. I started cleaning, not out of some burst of energy, but because I couldn't sit still. I boxed up her things, not in anger, but with precision. I labeled everything clearly, left it near the door, and sent her a short message that she could pick it up or I'd drop it off. She replied within an hour saying she'd send someone, which was fine with me. I didn't need to see her again, not for a while. In the days that followed, I tried to figure out what came next. I met with a lawyer, a quiet man with a calm voice who didn't ask questions about what happened. He just looked over the paperwork and started explaining options. Claire and I had kept separate finances for the most part, which simplified things. We didn't have children, and the house was in my name, bought with money I'd saved before the marriage. That gave me some leverage, though I wasn't trying to take her down in court. I didn't want her money. I just didn't want to carry her name anymore. I started sleeping better. Not longer, just deeper. The kind of sleep that didn't end with me waking up angry or confused. I stopped checking her social media, stopped wondering what she was doing, stopped replaying things in my head. I still had moments where the past would hit me, usually when I saw couples out in public or caught the sound of someone laughing the way she used to. But it didn't cut as deep anymore. It was like a cold that had finally passed, leaving behind just a little bit of weakness that would fade with time. Friends started reaching out, some who knew the story, some who didn't. I kept my answers simple. I didn't want to talk about it, and most of them respected that. The few who didn't got silence in return. I didn't owe anyone a full breakdown of what happened. I had already lived through it once. That was enough. One night, about 2 weeks after Claire's visit, I got a call from her mother. It caught me off guard. We'd never been particularly close, but she was always polite, always tried to stay neutral. She didn't ask me to reconsider anything, didn't try to defend Claire. She just said, I'm sorry it turned out like this. I thought you were good together. I told her I used to think so too. She paused for a second and said, you were the best thing that happened to her. I hope she figures that out one day. I thanked her and ended the call. I didn't need her to pick sides. I had already chosen mine. The divorce went through faster than expected. She didn't contest anything, didn't fight over furniture or pointless things. It was like she already accepted that it was over. Maybe she had accepted it long before I found out about the affair. Maybe I was the last one to realize that we weren't a real couple anymore. When the final paperwork arrived, I signed it the same night, dropped it off the next morning, and never looked back. The freedom didn't hit me all at once. It came slowly, in the form of quiet mornings and unplanned weekends. I went back to the gym, started reading again, picked up things I had let go of because I was too busy managing someone else's silence. I didn't become a new person overnight. I didn't suddenly find joy in every moment. But I wasn't carrying the same weight anymore, and that was enough for now. A few months later, I heard through a friend that Claire had moved to a different city, transferred to another branch of the hotel group. Apparently, she was trying to rebuild her professional reputation. I had no interest in the details. I didn't hate her. I didn't want revenge anymore. I just didn't want her in my life. Not in my thoughts, not in my inbox, not in my path. If people ask what happened, I tell them the truth, but not the whole truth. I say we grew apart. I say we wanted different things. That's not a lie. It's just the cleanest version of a messy story. And the rest, I keep for myself. Looking back, I don't regret how I handled it. I didn't explode, didn't destroy anything, didn't turn into someone I'd hate. I took the hit, I responded, and I walked away without burning down everything we built. Not because she deserved that, but because I deserved better than to let her change who I was. Now, when I think about her, I don't feel much at all. Just a memory of a version of me that no longer exists. And that, more than anything, tells me I made the right decision. The story didn't end with a dramatic scene or a perfect ending. It just ended the way it had to. Real, sharp, and final. That's enough for me.